The Refugee Food Festival basically is a citizen initiative which tries to change the perspective on how people look at refugees by leveraging food. So basically, we wanted to take the counter-narrative of all the negative messages and all the negative things that are conveyed around refugees in the media, which is most of the time makes us forget that refugees are people like us, like you, like me, that have talents, that have cultural heritage, that have many things to bring to their hosting societies. So we had this very simple idea of creating a food festival where restaurants would open their kitchen to refugee chefs to enable them to share their talents and their cultural backgrounds. Also to remind to everyone that when we're talking about Syria, when we're talking about Afghanistan, we're not only talking about countries who are at war, but we're also talking about countries that have history and that have a cultural heritage, and sometimes that comes from a much more longer time period than ours. So basically, for 1 or 2 meals, the restaurant will give his kitchen to the refugee chef. It goes from the 3-star Michelin restaurants to neighborhood restaurants, and all the time, all the restaurants are fully booked. It's always an opportunity to create a more welcoming environment and better understanding and explanation of where refugees come from and who they are, what are the stories. The second objective of the project is also to accelerate their professional integration. So basically, some of the chefs are hired after the participation to the festival by the restaurants, and the others were working with them all year long because some of them were entrepreneurs in their home country. They're working on developing their own catering activities or they're opening their own restaurants. So we're working with them all year long to develop their activities. We have opened a restaurant in Paris, in the 12th district, which is called La Résidence of the Refugee Food Festival, and which is dedicated to refugee chefs. So we offer a residency to refugee chefs that lasts from 2 to 6 months to enable them to test their cards, get used to what it means to run a restaurant in Paris in terms of regulation, in terms of labor law, in terms of administration, and then they follow a specific program, and the objective is to have them opening their restaurant. So the first chef, Nabil Attar, who's from Syria, opened his restaurant in Orléans, and now we're welcoming a Georgian chef, Magda Gegenava, and we're working with her to the opening of her restaurant in January.
Wow, that is super cool. So at Meet Your Mama, can you tell us a little bit more, because you're helping housewives using food to integrate. Tell us a little bit more about how that works, Donia.
Exactly. So again, also sorry for my English. So Meet My Mama is a startup that wants to empower migrant women through cooking. And with my friends Lumna and Youssef, we realized during our childhood and when we grew up that mamas have struggled to live by their passion. In France, there are more than 500,000 of women from all over the world that have a passion for cooking, that have a gift, but that they don't have the tools to live by their passion for cooking. And for most of them, it can be learning French, because when you're from another country, when you come to France, learning French is difficult. So they have a lack of confidence. And also in the food industry in France, 90% of the chefs are men. But when you ask them who taught you how to cook, it's their mom or their grandmother. So we were like, okay, so there are a lot of them, but they don't know how to build their own company. And in addition to that, we realized that a lot of companies in France do a lot of events with foods, and Parisian and non-Parisian love eating, because in France we love eating, we love international food, and we don't know how to find the good recipes, the good spices, except when we ask to a mama. So we were like, okay, so what should we do to connect those two parts? How to create bridges between our mamas and companies and people like you? And that's how we set up Meet My Mama, the first platform that gathers all the women that have, all the migrant women that have this gift for cooking and that wants to make their country a new way to discover. And in addition to that, in addition to connect them to companies, we empower them through the Mama Academy, which is the first academy that empowers migrant women through cooking. And all the tools that they don't have when they come to France, we give them through classes with Chief. So they learn, for example, how to design their dishes, how to use internet and Gmail. So we have a partnership with Google. And every year we have a lot of mamas that are trained by Google. They also have classes about pitch, because the other innovation of Meet My Mama is, first of all, bring food to companies, international food, but also to share stories and to make them a role model in the society. So when we go to a company, we bring food, and we also bring the mama who share her story and share who she is and all of her recipes. And for that, we train them. And we also created the Mama Success Box, which is the first box in the world that give all the tools to open their own catering company. So let's say that you are looking for a culinary laboratory. We give them a list with all the culinary laboratory in Paris. Let's say that they need a certification in security and safety. We give them a class, and at the end they have a diploma. So yeah.
Fabulous. So food is an unusual mechanism, really, to use in order to integrate migrants, but it is quite an international language in itself. I mean, everybody can relate to food. What I'd like to understand from both of you is why do you think food is an important part of citizenship of refugees, of integrating refugees? And Donia, do you want to start?
First of all, we think that in Meet My Mama, we think that food is a window to the world, and food doesn't need a language. If you want to share a meal, you don't need to speak the language. So if you come to France and you're from Syria and you speak Syrian, but you know how to cook halawat al-jaban, you don't need to speak French. So that's what we think, and that's why food is another language to empower, to integrate in France.
And it's also, I think, one of the very few things that connects us all around the world, one to each other. It's something that somehow enables us to feed vital needs, but it's also something which is related to who we are, to where do we come from. It tells a lot about our identity. It's something which is transmitted generations over generations. And somehow when you share a meal with someone, when you cook something to someone, you're telling to him what's your story, where do you come from, and it creates it enables to create a better understanding one toward each other. I think that somehow if you want, to make peace with someone, the first thing that you should do with him is cook a meal with him and maybe make him taste your food. And if you cook him something great, you would have done half of the way to making this peace. And this is how also, when you think about it, food is maybe the first thing that diaspora take with them when they leave their country. It's an immaterial heritage, and it's the first thing that they redo in their hosting communities. So this is how it could be leveraged to create a better integration and understanding, which is very important, between refugees and their hosting communities.
I love what you say there about the integration piece, because food does tell a story about, different cultures. It does tell a story about our background. It doesn't. It brings people together rather than creating a distinction. How do you help to tell some of those stories behind the food? Because often the disconnect happens with people in terms of integration, because there's that disconnect of stories. We don't understand each other. This must be really different. And foods are very distinct from different parts of the world. So how do you help to bring that together to include integration? Because otherwise you've got, well, I'm French, I don't understand anything about Syrian food, and these spices are all very different and eclectic. What do I do with them? So Louis, can you tell us a little bit more about how that works with the refugee? Yeah?
For the Refugee Food Festival, I mean, the thing we're working on is really creating connections between refugees and their hosting communities. So it's not only about going to the restaurant, it's not only about tasting Syrian food or tasting Eritrean food or Afghan food or any other food, because we've been working with 32 nationalities. It's really about meeting the chef and getting his story. So every time the chef has the opportunity to go around the tables and to explain his meals. And then, it's like you get connected to the invited refugee chef, and you realize somehow that the person which is in front of you is just someone like you. It's not what we are used to see, like this global mass coming through Europe, and that there's just a real story behind. So I think that somehow, in this sense, food is just the connection, the dot that makes the links between the chef, his story, where does he come from, and the guest in the restaurant.
Oh, fantastic. So it's a much more subtle approach in terms of actually it helps to open up that conversation. How do you find it yourself, Donia?
So first of all, we are called Meet My Mama because meeting is more than important for us. As I said, when we go to a company, we offer the food, but we also offer the mama, and she's there to give an inspirational speech. Last year, we did more than 200 events with more than 250 clients, like bank, in retail industry, in the luxury industry, and every time when the mama comes, it's something new, something emotional, because she gives, she says things about her story, about her recipe, and she really creates this connection between her food, and the clients. And also, when we began Meet My Mama, so 1 year ago, the meeting was important, and we decided to set up new events in Paris in restaurants. As you did with the Refugee Food Festival, we decided to see with restaurants if they want to open their restaurant when they were closed. That's what they did 5 or 6 times, and every time it was a new mama who shares her story. And 1 year after, Danone decided to open a new place in Paris, in République, called La Cantine du Monde, and it's been 5 months. And during 5 months, every week, we create story, we share new experience, and we make discovery a new country every week during dinner and brunch, every Wednesday and every Sunday. Because for us, the meeting is what people are looking for, company are looking for, and I think you are looking for, it's the mama. And you have the chance today to meet them, because we have a food court just next to the entrance of Station F. So if you want to meet 5 mamas from Turkey, Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Ivory Coast, and the last one, Morocco, you can meet our 5 mamas.
Oh, fabulous. You go and do that. That sounds like a great deal of fun. So how do we grow these initiatives? Because it's great, but how do we take this sort of initiative from Paris and maybe have it in, I don't know, London as well, in the US and other parts of the world where, where people are fleeing to? What's needed to be able to have a really huge impact? What do you think?
So we need mamas, but we are lucky because we have mamas everywhere, in little villages, in big cities, in medium cities. So finding mamas is not something difficult. We have like every day mamas who send us an email from Paris, from the south of France, from Lyon, from even in Europe. We already have mamas, and we also need companies. Lucky we are, because everywhere in big cities we have companies. So we just need time to go there, but we're coming. So.
You're on your way. Louis, what about you?
Yeah, and for the Refugee Food Festival, after the first edition that started in Paris, in 11 restaurants, we were contacted by citizens from all over the world that told us, okay, guys, this is fantastic. Please come and do it in our cities. So with Marine, we didn't have the power of ubiquity. We only have our 2 legs and our 2 arms. So we decided with UNHCR that we would work on a methodology kit that would enable other citizens to organize a refugee food festival in their hometown. So our model now is, there is this guide where we describe how do you identify the restaurants, how do you find the chefs, how do you work on the menus, how do you manage the logistics, how do you run the entire event, which is freely available online to anyone, and other citizens can organize refugee food festival in their city with our close follow-up. So from Paris, in 2 years, the festival was organized in New York, San Francisco, Athens, Madrid, Rome, Brussels, Amsterdam, Lyon, 15 other cities all around the world, also Geneva. And in all the projects, in all the products we're working on, we're trying to, and we're working on methodology kit to disseminate our initiative worldwide, with always the idea of having citizens organizing the festival. All the citizens working on the festival organization are volunteers, because we strongly believe that it's through the civil society mobilization, by getting the civil society involved, that we'll manage to somehow give a proper answer to the challenge of welcoming refugees with dignities in our hosting societies.
Fantastic. Last question for both of you. What is the bigger vision? So how do you know, like, if we were to kind of project out, like, say, 10 years, what does success really look like to you sort of in 10 years' time when you can say, we did it, we made a really big difference in the world? Donia, what does that look like for Meet Your Mama?
I would say that all the mama in the world would be able to live their passion and to be entrepreneur in which way they want to be.
Fantastic. I love how clean and crisp that is. Louis, what about you? What would you say that bigger vision is?
I would say that it would be a world where borders are not closed for people who are fleeing war and persecutions and conflicts, and that they are given the tools and the means to integrate themselves in their hosting societies.
Fantastic. How amazing is that? Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together again for Louis and Donia. Thank you very much.